Hello, in this video we will see the land design documentation tools. We will start by seeing the irrigation tools, how to insert the sprinklers individually or arranged in array mode, how to draw pipes and report the quantities in lists, and we will continue with the listing tools, inserting a plan list. We will see the list features, how to add custom parameters to it, or how to export it. Then we will see some other documentation tools to insert plant labels, plant photos, single labels, dimensions linked to plants or other objects, the slope tool, and finally show the plant shadows in 2D drawings.
In this video, we're going to see the land documentation tools, and we will start with the irrigation system tools. So I'm going to work from the top viewport. I will switch to 2D representation. And we're going to insert some sprinklers that can be placed individually or arranged in array, and later on some piping system. So we'll start by inserting a few sprinklers on that area. We can choose the sprinkler type. We have 4 different options available. We can browse for the symbol in the land design library, or if you have other symbols, you can also select them with this button from your PC. Or if you want to draw it, you can just select this button to pick the symbol directly from the model. Here you define the symbol width, radius, and sweep angle, and just insert it into the model. You need to define the insert point and rotation, and do this for the other sprinklers. Later on, you can select the sprinkler and change its features from the Lands Edit panel. Another way to insert sprinklers is with this command. So we can select the boundaries option, select again the sprinkler settings, and finally select a boundary curve. The sprinklers will be distributed in the best way within the boundary of the curve. I do right click to end the command, and later on we can select the sprinkler array and adjust its features so it better fits with a given area and avoid having the water going beyond the limits of this area. By the way, when we create sprinklers, they go directly to a specific layer that we can find here, so it's easier to hide them or just hide the sprinkler radius. Remember that you can define these settings from the land design options, layers, and here specifying the layer where these elements will be created by default. Now, let's see how to create the piping system to provide water to all this area that we have filled with sprinklers. So pipes can be created by picking existing polylines, defining them point to point, or selecting sprinklers. So let's see the first option, and we will imagine that we have the water provider from that corner of the park. So I'm going to draw a polyline. That goes this way, for example. I'm going to draw some other lines that connect all these sprinklers. Now we can run the pipe command, define the section, pressure, material, and the rest of details, and select here the existing option in the command line. So we'll need to select an existing polyline, which will automatically be converted into a pipe. We can do the same if we repeat the same command for these curves we've got over here. Select existing option and select each one of these curves. Now, when we select one of these pipes, we can check its properties from the land design panel. Let's see the other way to insert pipes. So we run the pipe command, we define these details that can be changed later on. And in this case, we're going to select the new option. We can either select an existing sprinkler or define point. So we can select this point, and end the pipe here. Or we can select a sprinkler set. So I'm going to select new and pick a sprinkler. So when I select another sprinkler, this will be connected with the first one. And finally, I will select the point option and click here. The interesting part of this last method is that if we move the position of this sprinkler, the pipe will still be connected. Now I can select any of these pipes and change here the features. As I wish. And finally, insert the details of the sprinklers and the pipes that we have inserted with the corresponding listing command. So we can generate a sprinkler list and also a pipe list. Now it's time to insert a plant list. So we're going to use this plant list command to do so. So we're going to run this command. We just need to pick an insert point, and we will get a list of all the plant species we have in the model. If we take a closer look, we can see an icon, an ID, the species name, and the amount of units we have for each one of the species. If we select this list, we can see here in the Edit panel all the different fields that we can display in that list. For example, we can add the density that will be useful for the species used in ground covers. We can also sort the way we want to display this list by any of these fields. For example, we can sort by the index in ascending or descending order. If we explore the other features on the list, we can also see that we can edit the borders, or the font of the text, size, margins, and other details. From the General tab, we can change the plant list name. In addition to these fields to show, we can add our custom fields for the plant species, and we can do so from the document properties. So we're going to go to Tools, Options, and under Document Properties, here we've got this parameter section where we already have a couple of custom parameters if you start from a land design template, but we can add new ones. I'm going to call this planting year. I will assign this to a category. Basically, categories are a way to group custom parameters, and a data type that in this case could be an integer. I'm going to say OK. Now I can select any of the plant species, and from the Properties panel, Parameter section, we can assign a value for this new parameter that we have just added. For example, I can say 2005. Now, if we select the list, we go back to the Edit panel, we can just enable this planting year to see the corresponding value next to the species that we have edited. Just take into account that this list will always update live as soon as we change any information on the plants that are listed here. For example, if we edit this list, we set the separation to 4, you can see how this number has updated immediately. Finally, we can export that list. If we select it, we go to Listing, click on Export, and finally click on the Export option. We can export that as HTML file or XLS to open it in Excel. Now, let's take a look at the plant label tools. The plant label commands provide labeling functions to plant species with identification code and specify the quantity of specimens existing in the model. For example, we can start by inserting a single label for this plant. I'm gonna lock the zoning layer and defining here the insert point. So the first value inside this label corresponds to the number of units of the plant species selected, and the second value corresponds to the index of this species. We can check, in this case, number 21 corresponds to this species, the jacaranda. If we select the label, we go to the Lands Edit panel, and we can change the way we can display this information. We can switch to the initials, name, or the common name, or we can also switch to this other way of displaying the information. We have some options to display the border, and of course, the text attributes. We can also enable this leader that points the center of the plant. So the plant specimens can be labeled individually or as a linking set. And we can do this with the plant label linking command. So we need to select the plant species in the order we want to link them, to right click, and finally insert the label. If we move the position of any of these plants, the polyline will follow. We can add more plants to be displayed in this label, and we can do this by selecting the label. We go to Plant Label and select this option, Add or Remove Plants. So I'm going to select the other plants that I want to add to this label in the desired order. Later on, we can select this center control point to change the position of that label. If we had several labels here referencing different plants, there is a way to identify the plants of one label. If we select the label and we say Identify Plants, which highlight. In the opposite way, if we select a plant and we select this Identify label, we will be able to see which label points to it. Now, let's take a look at the plant photo command. This command creates a label with an image loaded from the cloud and draws a leader pointing to the referenced plant. So we can run it, select any plant. If we have this checkbox enabled, a search from the cloud will start with the referenced species. We can select another file from our PC by clicking on this button. If we uncheck the cloud images, we will see the images stored in the plant database. So we select any of these images, we define the insert point and the dimension of the picture. If we want to change that picture afterwards, we can just select it, go to Plant Photo, and change image by any other one. Here we can change the dimensions of the picture as well as the text attributes. Or if we want to show border or leader, linking the image with the species. Now we can take a look at the label command, which draws an annotation leader and a label with the text. So we can specify one point, for example, pointing this building, define the position of the label, and now we can just select it and type here any text. There are different ways to display some information. For example, here, City Hall. Now, let's take a look at the dimension command, which allows the dimensioning of plant, civil work elements, and other entities from the specific coordinate origin point on the plan. So when we run this command, we need to specify a new coordinate origin point or select an existing one. In this case, we don't have any, so I'm going to define it in this position. Now, we need to choose between linear or ordinate dimensionings. Let's start first with the linear option. I'm going to select this plant, click OK, and this shows the dimensions related to the origin point. If we move this plant to a new position, these dimensions will update. These are regular dimensions. If we want to edit them, we go to the Properties, Linear Dimension, and here we can change the style, the height, and other details. In case of the origin coordinates, we can check the properties from the Lens Edit panel and change its features. For example, I'm going to define it as a finite segment in the abscisses and ordinate. I'm going to set 1 meter length in each side of the axis. Now, we can take a look at the other kind of dimension. So in this case, I'm going to select this existing point, and I will choose the ordinate one. I'm going to select these objects now, and in this case, I will get the coordinates next to the plant center point. And again, if I move the position of these plants, these values will update in relation to the origin of coordinates. Let's take a look at the slope command, and we're going to draw it over the terrain area. The slope command draws an annotation leader with arrowhead and attached text displaying the slope of the selected path. We can either draw the path with a few options or select an existing curve. For example, when we run the slope command, we can choose any of these options to draw the curve. For example, a polyline. And I can measure the slope from this point to that other point. Now I can select the whole object or the start or the end point and move it into another place so the slope value will update. If we select the slope from the edit panel, we've got a few options to edit the text, style, height, or some other options for the arrow and circle at the start of it. If we want to measure the slope of this path, for example, we could pick this curve. But in this case, the start and the end point are in the same position, so the slope would be 0. Instead, we can break this curve into several segments and pick one to calculate the slope of it. So I'm going to use the split command, select this curve, right-click and select point option in the command line. So I'm going to break it from this point to that other point. So now we'll be able to measure the slope of this segment. I run the slope command. I'm going to select this curve, do right-click, and here it is. Let's take a look at the plant shadows command. When we run this command, we insert a group of hatches that are generated under the vegetation species in order to give a shadow effect into the plan views. If we zoom in and select the shadows, we can edit its features from the Lens Edit panel. We can change the direction to west or south, for example, or the height according to the sun position. Also, we can change the hatch pattern. So I'm going to pick a single hatch. And from here, I can change the color or the layer where is it placed. By default, it's created at the shadows layer. I'm going to pick a dark gray. Also, we can enable a white background under the crowns in order to avoid shadows cover the 2D crowns of the other plants in the nearby. This white background can have a transparency factor in the lens version for AutoCAD, and also we can reduce the diameter according to a percentage related to the plant to the crown diameter. As we can see here, there are some shadows that are not displayed. This happens because they are placed under the shaded areas, the zones. So the plant shadows are always created at the elevation where the lowest plant is located. So probably we've got some plants that are located below the elevation of the zones. In a previous tutorial, I created that surface that I tagged as a terrain and I moved underwards in order to do not be coincident with the zones. And all the plants projected to that surface. So I'm gonna adjust it to 0 elevation. So now the plants are all on the 0 elevation inside that area, and I can actually delete that surface now, since I've got all the areas covered by zones. Now I can see all the shadows displayed under the plants.